What's up, outliers? Got three things for the market update today. First, we're going to talk about Dollar General. Then we're going to talk about the tech sector. Then we're going to talk about GameStop. Let's get right to it. So the first thing is Dollar General had a hell of a day today. And as you can tell, it closed at the bottom of this candle. It just got shoved down all day. It tried to rally a little bit post earnings, and its earnings wasn't abysmal, but it definitely wasn't good. So we can take a look through what happened. This was before the market opened, and it dropped over 25%. And we can see that it came in at 170 per share, which is down from 213 year over year. And it was expected at 179. Net sales came in 10.21 billion, which actually expanded. That doesn't seem, too bad to me, but this is the big problem. So it expects fiscal 2024 EPS of 550 to 620 and sales growth 4.7 to 5.3%, which is down. So yeah, this is one of the things that you'll find with forward guidance is this exact kind of scenario. The market was originally expecting it at 712. This obviously is really missing that to the downside, unfortunately for them. So they are behind the curve here. Now, the other thing I want to take a look at with you is just the indices, but specifically tech, because tech really had a pretty big problem out here. So if we take a look at first the sectors, and we can see what's going on here, tech is still, this is now in a negative sloping channel. Like this is very clearly trending down. And we're still seeing relative weakness across quite a few of the sectors, but it definitely looks like to me tech is leading us to the downside. The S&P 500 is staying a little more resilient, trending sideways here, but tech is in the picture. That's one of the biggest things that I see here. And if we take a look across the indices, we can see that, again, Qs, which is a little more tech heavy than the others, is already moving down towards these moving averages. The S&P 500 still has a little bit of room here before it starts rotating over, but then we're seeing the Russell actually bucking the trend. VIX is down. Curious, huh? So VIX is down, market is down. That happens sometimes. It's not quite as infrequent as people might think, but it's still interesting to see this slowing amidst the rest of this seeming potential sell-off accelerating. It's a little too early to tell. Now, quick recap on Nvidia. I was curious how it was going to fare today, and it actually fell a little more than I expected. Earlier in the day, it was hovering right around 120s. That seemed about where it was going to be. And then it looked like it was being held up, propped up pretty strong, actually, by people interested in it, but they just couldn't hold on. And there's a massive sale candle today with over 89% sale volume. So people were just unwinding here, and I get it. This was a pretty interesting earnings release because it was so focused on Nvidia and the impact to the broader market, and then the tone for AI. All these kinds of things are so topical right now. So I totally get it, but it's just a little more emotional than I was expecting. It seemed like it was hanging in there, and then it just kind of broke down the rest of the day. So yeah, this is interesting to me, but something that I think is not unexpected after its earnings, because again, I was talking about this before. The earnings in here needed to be perfect in order for it to continue this kind of parabolic ascent. So it doesn't surprise me that we find ourselves in this scenario with Nvidia. The way I'm looking at tech right now is it still, to me, is very promising long-term, but short-term, it looks a little weaker and something that I'm definitely going to be minding my exposure in. So now we need to take a look at GameStop, because GameStop had a great day today. And again, it's not like a huge day, but I am so stoked that it started coming into this value area and immediately started rejecting right back out. Like that was great for me to see. I was very, very happy with that. I still see RSI, both raw RSI and the EMA below the 50 handle. So I don't love that from just a general strength picture, but this was a good day in here. And the other thing is we can see the volume really stepped up big time. Again, it's really hard to see because the volume is so skewed by all this noise back here. But if you take a look at the volume today was 10.3 million shares, with 53% buy volume. And the 20-day average volume is only 5, and the 5-day average volume is 5.7. So this is 2 times the average midterm 20-day and short-term volume. So there are a lot of people stepping out here that really liked it at this point. So that was sick. I was really, really happy with that. And again, we do have earnings coming up in here come the 10th after the market closes. So now the other thing is I took a look through just the options flow for both GameStop and Chewy to see if anything stuck out to me. Not a lot, if I'm being completely honest with you, but there were a few more transactions that came in above $100,000, but it's still just 5. So there's not a tremendous amount of activity, and a lot of it is further out in time, right? So we see these 26 expirations, then we see this 25 expiration. So a lot of it is generally longer term in nature. So yeah, just not quite as much going on there, which is okay. It's still relatively quiet in here. So if we take a look at the options, let's take a look at the volume. Today we had 211,000 calls trade against 47,000 puts, which this is actually quite a lot. And 30 AUG was super active, and we can see the 6 SEP was also fairly active. My expectation here is that we'll continue to see both of these vols rise as they are. And I think that we start building out this 13 SEP sooner rather than later. That's my guess. So if we take a look at the open interest, 576,000 calls against 288,000 puts. General call skew in here, not super heavy, but it's still there, which is good to see. And we can see, though, that a lot of these calls are actually further out in time, which is generally anomalous. So the 17 Jan 25s, that's where a lot of the largest positions are, which, again, previously we would see much more of that in the near-term expirations. The 30 AUGs have 110 against 29K on the put side. So strong call skew here, but we'll take a look at how many of those are out of the money. I would imagine the majority. And the 13 SEP expiration is still real quiet. 25K calls against 10,000 puts. So we'll see if we start getting that build out in the earnings expiration cycle. It's not quite there yet, but it's getting there. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with respect to GameStop is, as I look through the order flow here, I see a really healthy mix across expirations, which, again, this is not so much the case that I've typically seen in the product. I generally see this specific ticker look like the majority of volume tends to be centralized in the front expirations. And we can still see some elements of that, right? Like all these 30 AUGs, it's still happening to a degree, but I am seeing way more other expirations pop up on this list. Doesn't really mean a whole lot. It just means that we're not hyper concentrated in the front expiration like we have been previously. And I draw your attention to it simply because it is an observation that I have. There's not a lot to take away from it. As of now, it's something that we track the changes. That's how a lot of this stuff works. There's not always a takeaway directly from the individual observation, but the trend of an observation. So that's just something generally new to add into the mix. All right, gang. That wraps me up for today. As always, let me know if there's anything you want me to take a look at. Be an outlier, and I'll see you guys on the live session tomorrow. Catch you guys later.